And you're good.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of the Emmy Award-winning Kevin Show. Everybody, our Emmy.
Emmy Award possessing show.
Why do you have to ruin it? It's an Emmy Award.
I don't want to get sued.
I didn't say it already won one. It's probably going to win one. You ruin everything. Anyway, the probably going to win an Emmy Award, Beer and Bastards, episode number 16. We're here with a regular lineup and a couple of very special people. One of them isn't Kevin. It's not Mike or Matt either, so I just want to get that out of the way.
We can't all be special.
Not everybody can be. We have, first off, Corey Iacono of Being Classically Liberal. He actually made an appearance. He's a real person.
Where?
He's a base. Can you see him? He's right there.
What's up, Kevin?
He's actually pretty good looking, and he has a very strong, manly voice. It's very deep. Good for you. I hope I embarrassed you. I love the haircut, too.
Yeah.
It's high and tight. Looking good. We also have Michael Lee of Being Liberal Logic and Being Classically Liberal. Also of the new Being Constitutional, a page him and I are doing on constitutional issues, things Kevin doesn't know anything about. We also have Matt Palumbo, who's written about 17 books before he turned 11. All on the empirical sciences. It's incredible. How many schools have you turned down, Matt, honestly?
Hundreds, Will.
Hundreds? I mean, including some Ivy Leagues.
Yes, it's all the Ivy Leagues.
All the Ivy, okay.
All the Ivy Leagues.
We also have Vince. I want to say your last name, but I'm going to say Tornado because that's the name of your show. But it's Tornado?
Yes, Tornero.
Tornero. And you have the Vince Tornado Show on WTVN 610 in Columbus, Ohio. I hear it's the best show around.
Yes, it is, according to my mother.
What do you talk about on that show?
Anything, man. Anything that comes up.
And moms are always right. You know that, right?
Absolutely. Mother knows best.
She does know best. Good thing, good thing I listen to my mom about everything. That's why I'm in her basement right now. Helping her with the yard work. And our special guest tonight is Avens O'Brien. You write with the Libertarian Republic. Is that recent, or have you been doing that for a while?
I believe I started writing the very first week of March, so I guess it's been about
been recent, yeah.
months. Yeah, it's pretty recent.
Okay, and you have your column. It was Ask Avens.
I have a couple random things. I write for him I write continuously, but I decided to start a weekly column of advice. So yes, I have a column called Ask Avens.
All right, and I understand you watched our last show with Robin Kerner of the Blue Republican. Everybody loved Robin. I guess we should bring him back and let him host the show. I'll quit.
Yes.
All right, let's take should we let Robin host the show, Kevin?
Absolutely. I mean, seriously, a rubber plant could host the show better than you.
Well, good thing nobody cares what you say.
Thank you.
Anyway, Avens, I know you wanted to get into how to relate to liberals, because obviously I was watching the evil Fox News today, and I heard Krauthammer lay it out. He said that conservatives think liberals are well-meaning but dumb, and he said liberals just think conservatives are evil. Conservatives, libertarians, look at it however you want. We're looking at this from the liberal mindset. How would you approach? Did you agree more with Robin's point or more with mine, which is mine's like attack. His is more like maybe make him a sandwich, hang out with them, give him a hug, buy him some ice cream. What do you think?
Well, I actually have a YouTube video about this where I talk about how to talk to anybody about various libertarian issues. But I'm generally of the opinion that ideas flow between friends, and so when having a conversation with someone, liberal, conservative, or whatever, it's best to kind of get into their space and become friends with them and be able to have a conversation, not fight, but rather.
Elaborate on their space. What is their space? Can you?
I like to see. I basically in any given situation, I argue with people along the spectrum. I have friends who are conservative, friends who are liberal. I have friends who are feminists and friends who are MRAs. I deal with a lot of different dichotomies, and it's all about kind of meeting people where they are and then leading them to where you want them to be. And so I'm all about discussing things in a way that's like, hey, what are your ideas, and kind of engaging people, not in like you're wrong and I'm going to tell you, how to be right. I'm more, it's like, hey, let's have this conversation and figure out where we have similar values, and like I like to assume that everyone is reasonably well-meaning, even if I disagree wholeheartedly with what they have to say. And by giving people that benefit of the doubt, I'm able to kind of have these more human conversations with people in which there's a lot of respect exchange, and then it's just easier to have these dialogues in which people can be respectful, and even if they disagree with me at the end, they still kind of go, oh, well, Avens is all right, even though she is, a libertarian, or whatever it is.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think libertarians, when specifically addressing the left, are too empirical? This is how the market, they're too mechanical in their explanations, and they lack the emotional, the empathetic aspect, describing, well, this is minimum wage is bad, and we give the mechanical answer rather than saying minimum wage is bad because it disadvantages the unskilled workers. We should approach it as more of a kind of like a populist issue rather than the mechanical supply and demand. Is that kind of what you mean?
I generally think that. I think in general you have to package things how people want to experience them. So if in general I found that my liberal friends, if I try to have a purely emotional discussion with them, will go like, oh, but that's just emotion. I mean, frankly, the libertarian perspective that, let's say, taxation is robbery, for example, if you talk about that, like, oh, taxation is robbery, you want to point a gun to my head and steal my money. And liberals will be like, wow, that's a very emotional argument you've got there. And so it's not like they want to see a logic and empirical evidence as well, but the key is that you have to, there's a marriage between the emotional argument and the logical one, and you have to be able to serve both. If you purely come at things logically, you're going to miss out on a lot of audience and a lot of dressing, a lot of, you've got a cake, but you need to put frosting on it.
Well, that's a good point, and I like the point you brought up about the taxes and the gun to my head thing, the ones that generally anarchists will make. And I think that mainstream libertarians come from a more pragmatic perspective rather than from the left or from the ANCAPs. I don't know if it's so much as more logical, but more pragmatic.
Right.
Each side likes to claim the mantle of pragmatism.
It's true.
I'm going to go to Corey here, since he draws the ire of many people, specifically the feminist community and every other community in the entire world. You're entirely too logical, Corey, and all of your stats they hurt people's feelings. So if you could stop being a racist, misogynistic, homophobe for 5 minutes, perhaps your message would get across. Do you think that maybe you personally and your cohort over here, the child prodigy Matt, go at things too empirically and you don't put enough feeling in there? Should you add a little bit more empathy? Like, I empathize with these folks, this is why you're wrong, or do you think your approach is valid and helpful?
I actually agree a lot with what Evan said, but as obviously Matt and I like to do things from an empirical perspective, and that we kind of like our audience is more like people who are scientific-minded, logic, and that's what we generally appeal to. Like, it's probably a good idea to appeal to emotion sometimes, but
what audience are you looking to serve, though? Are you looking to serve the more academic community? Are you looking to get these ideas out to people who may not have heard them before? Are you looking to change minds? What's the audience you're looking for?
I do like appealing to the academic community. As you know, I like to cite a lot of research, so does Matt. And also, just, I think, giving people information that may run contrary to their beliefs.
Right.
I think that is very important in changing their minds. And so even the average person, if you give them a stat or some research that runs counter to their beliefs, it certainly may change their mind, or at least open their minds to realize that some positions aren't as illogical as they sound.
Right, that's a good point. I think Avens appeals to a crowd that's more inquisitive. That they're looking. I think perhaps they're out there looking for different information, whereas you're writing for primarily an academic community. Like, I like to read what you write because of the stats in there. I add them to my armory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I write relatively academic stuff. Nobody reads. What the hell? I'm writing on Lincoln and the Constitution. Nobody cares. Mike cares, but Mike and I sometimes talk each other to sleep at night. I hope that's not weird. I hope your wife's not watching, but sometimes that's how long we talk. I know what audience Kevin appeals to, and it's people that really, I don't know, have a few screws loose. Kevin, how did you corner this niche? No, in all honesty, that's. I mean, if we're gonna get the likes of Thomas Sowell on here, I can't have you throwing around middle fingers.
Hey, you want Thomas Sowell on?
This is our way to get an Emmy.
There you go.
But you appeal to a broader crowd. Sometimes you like putting things up that debunk other people's points of view. And you do so. You don't. I mean, I guess you appeal to emotion a bit, but without. I mean, I wouldn't say you engage in fallacy, but you appeal to emotion, for lack of a better phrase, and you use stats. You do a little bit of both. Okay, moving on to Michael Lee. Go ahead, Kevin. How do you feel the reaction of the crowd is, though? If you had to pick one course of action, what would you pick? The appeal to emotion or the facts, and why? You have to pick one. Don't give me this middle ground crap that you always try to run.
Well, since you just took my entire time speaking with your little soliloquy there, I will summarize by saying...
How do you know vocab words you don't read? Where do you get these from?
Can I talk?
All right, go ahead. Shut up.
Do you have one of these?
Yeah, that's ours.
Okay. So anyways, here's the issue. Just like with the Blue Republican last week and Avens this week, actually understanding that populism is the most effective way of getting people to follow your beliefs that's the way you actually change the world. That's the way you change your society. You actually make change happen. You can't just come at somebody with math. That's never going to work. You can't come at somebody with some argument that's based on logic, because a lot of people fall asleep halfway through. You have to tell them something that is really going to hit them in the emotions. Here's the thing. There's a lot of ideologies that use emotion yet have no empirical evidence to stand on behind it. We do. So when we use emotion, and by we, I mean I'm assuming that you guys are all basically very smart people. When we use emotion, and people say, you're right, but do you actually have the numbers to stand on? I can provide numbers, and so can you, and so can anybody here. That's what makes us more, that's what makes us have more power, potential power, to create change, is that it's not just appealing to emotion. We can back it up. So
to summarize, you're saying we can use their same tactics, but we actually have the facts that back us up.
Exactly.
So if we can engage in emotion, and then we can, if they want to engage in logic, we have that too.
Exactly. But when you start with emotion, that's how you end up winning people over.
Okay. I know Michael's a very emotional guy. Sometimes he weeps to me on the phone. I talk to him about things like puppies and kitties, kitty cats and stuff, and he gets overly emotional. Says he's eating a tub of ice cream. I don't know why. Something that's comfort food. I don't know. But Michael, you tend to use you come at an angle maybe probably more logical than emotional. But do you feel that your arguments are more logical than emotional? I mean, are you emotional about the logic? I mean, aren't you passionate about that? Why do you have to be? I mean, isn't that your passion?
Well, I think everybody likes to think that they're logical. Even someone that we disagree with, you can tell them that they're not being logical, but
good point.
They're not going to believe you. Everybody thinks they're logical. And yeah, I think I'm logical too. I don't use much emotion. I don't like using emotion because I think it waters down the argument. I think Kevin has a good point that you can be emotional and that can have a good message, but I try to be a little more low-key, just use logical arguments and see if I can convince people. But I think Robin last week and then this week we brought it up too. Some of the things that we do, we don't identify with people before we argue with people, and I think that's a good point. I think that you have to identify with them first, and I'm actually going to start trying to do that more from now on.
Okay. So Robin changed your mind, huh?
Yeah, Robin was great. I agreed with everything he said on the show last week.
I hate every one of you except for Vince and Avens. Okay. Matt, I'm going to go to you. How many things did you agree with last week that Robin said, and how many things did you agree with that I said? Obviously, mine's far more profound. Go ahead.
I don't remember that much of what you guys talked about in depth. Like I didn't keep a tally, but
okay. You want me to do it? You want me to like shorten it for you? Robin?
It's hard to remember things when you're 11.
Yeah, it's true. That part of your brain's not fully formed. The part that writes a myriad books, That's all there.
Yes.
Part of the memory is lost. But
No, I mean,
saying, hold their hand. I'm saying throw the hand in disgust and ridicule them.
I mean, I think there's a place for both. Let's just say that.
Yes.
I mean, certain people like me and Corey, I think it's just our personality. Corey and I are not good at arguing the emotional side. And I think we're just. I mean,
what makes you not good at? What makes you not good at it, Matt? Pinpoint. Tell me why you're not good at it.
Oh, I've been introverted as fuck for like the past 20 years. There's no coming from that.
I'm introverted, so that means you're unemotional. When we hung out, we had a lot of fun. We were emotional. True. We were laughing. We were breaking balls. I see a lot of emotion. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're. But I mean, I don't think.
I mean, in terms of my thinking, I should phrase it. I don't know. I find the logical reasoning much more easy to come to. I mean, listen, I think that's how I contribute is through that. I think other people contribute like the way Robin does, by reasoning with, sitting down with people, reasoning with them, buying them lunch, and
right. I think
things you listed.
Part of it, I think, is growing. Maybe you grew up similar, but I was grew up to, and I was taught to not to think with emotion, and that to think clearly.
The same way.
Right, and like if you think with emotion, you're going to make an incorrect decision, and it could be very costly. Vince, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your stuff. I did more of my research on Avens because she's a lot prettier than you, and I figured that I would research her more than I'd research you. Not that you're a really good-looking guy. Don't get me wrong here.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to call you instead of Michael in the late night. But I don't know how many debates you've been in. But what do you feel about what we've been talking about? Do you feel about the area that the route that Kevin wants to take, like hug them, coddle them? Do you give them a smooch, Kevin, or do you go after them, make your point stern. If they don't want to hear it, then I hit the road.
Well, there are a bunch of times where I've been in debates with callers on the air, and one thing I try to do is not sing Kumbaya with them at the end of the call. I try to make one singular point with them, because a lot of the times, anytime I get an argument with a lib, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's like 7 different points that they make. So one of the things that I try to do is stick with one point and be stern about it and do a little bit of emotion, but I think logic is important too. I think what Kevin said with using emotion to introduce but not using that as the total foundation is smart. So I stick with one point and I use a mix of logic and emotion.
Okay, so yeah, everybody's pretty much on the same page except for my buddy Corey. He agrees with me. Yeah. Right, isn't that right, Corey? Just say yes. All right, cool.
I think we need to recognize something in all of this, though, is that, as libertarians, we're individualists and we believe that people are individuals, and every single person is going to have a different reaction to what you have to say. And so some people are more logical, some people are more emotional, and you have to actually bother to get to know people so that you can figure out how best to sell them your ideas.
That's right. I agree with that. And I mean, look, Robin can use his methods, Kevin can use his, I'll use mine. I think it's the free market of opinions here.
That's why I think we're all important in this. That's why there should be more libertarians with more ideas instead of less.
We're all not important. We're not important in this.
Don't take my jokes, Kevin. You interject and you take my joke. You're not the important one. Now keep it down over there. All right. I want to move on to a topic I hear an awful lot about, and it's admittedly a topic I never looked much into, but it's feminism, broadly defined, and more narrowly defined. What I've heard a lot of is socialized feminism. Are you a self-described feminist, Avens?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Association of Libertarian Feminists, so okay. I consider myself a feminist, but my feminism is very different than the feminism you find on Jezebel or
that's what I want to get to. I want to get to the spectrum of feminism. You have a leftist feminism, I guess we'll go with, and then you have a more centrist or right feminism.
I really hate the left-right dichotomy, but whatever.
I gotta give it something.
Tell the I feminist, which is the individual feminist.
I mean, I would just there's only one logic or truth. There really isn't anything other than that. But what is socialized feminism? That means that society is inherently misogynistic. It's a man's world, to quote James Brown. What does that mean, essentially?
Well, I make a point of not speaking for people that I don't agree with, and so when it comes to socialized feminism, a lot of the mainstream feminism you see out there is more geared towards, there's systemic oppression and there's systemic problems and we need to fight them, and a lot of the arguments that have come into that have been like, oh, well, we'll fight them using government. And I find that really ironic, considering that feminists complain that men run the government, and yet you want the government to help you.
Right.
There's early feminism, and I've written a couple little pieces on this, and like historical feminists were more about kind of breaking the barriers of, women are individuals and women have individual rights, and so it was more about like, okay, just like let women have the same rights as men, and let them be individuals and make their own decisions free from societal constraints or systematic constraints that were previously oppressing them. And so that's the big difference, is that libertarian feminists generally say the state is the enemy of women. It's not a tool to help women grow, but rather to help women become liberated, because that's the opposite of liberation. And so individualist feminism or libertarian feminism is usually looking at the state and going, this is the problem. And so we tend to kind of encounter other feminists and go, you do realize this is the problem, right? Like, you're saying, hey, state solution, but that's not the right solution.
So the same issues that offend women also offend men, and they mainly come from the state. My point is, okay, yes, women have individual rights, and men have individual rights. I think a human being has individual rights. And sans the 19th century and early 20th century, when they were denied the vote, and obviously they didn't have property rights for a while. What rights are they denied in today's political climate, or today's, with the amendments obviously to the Constitution? What rights are they denied today specifically that are available to men?
So there are a number of things that I pursue as an individualist feminist. One, birth control for women is not available over the counter, and it should be. Things like bodily autonomy. I'm a very, very adamant pro-choice individual, and I typically fight for more ways for women to access abortion services or in general birth control services. But also factors like, I actually did an article about this a while back, and I want to actually revisit it and go into it more. But women are often denied rights at the point of pregnancy, at which point you become pregnant, and then suddenly doctors can override your own personal preferences in terms of home birth or hospital birth, etc. To the point where there was actually a woman in Florida who was last year was basically told that if she didn't comply with her doctor's preferences about how she give birth, something like, it's a very intimate thing. Like, it's not like she's having an abortion. She's literally like just trying to decide how to give birth to her baby. And the state, and basically the doctor said, I want you to do it this way. She said no. And the hospital said, well, if you come into our hospital, we're going to do it this way, with or without your consent. They went to a court, and the court upheld them. The court upheld the doctor and said, you don't have a right to your own body and to make your own decisions about how you bring a child into this world. And so things like that, it's recognizing that there are situations in which we need to make sure to advocate for people's ability to control their own bodies, their own medical needs.
So abortion's just primarily a female issue.
Well, actually, I wrote an article called "Nobody Should Be Forced to Be a Parent," in which I talked about the idea that men need a way to opt out of parenthood. And so, if a woman and a man at present, if a woman and a man the woman gets pregnant and then the woman decides she wants to keep it and the man doesn't, there's really no recourse for the man. He's going to end up responsible for that child, and that's a problem. Right. And so I actually wrote about that.
So being responsible for your actions is a problem?
I think
or is it a problem just because the state mandates that the father has to pay for the kid?
Well, I think that it's a problem if somebody does not want to be a parent and says, hey, look, you're pregnant, I don't want to be part of this child's life, that was not my intention, whatever. A woman can have an abortion, but a man is stuck with whatever the woman chooses in terms of his responsibility for that situation. And so I'm generally of the opinion that if you go, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to be part of this, you can sign a contract, sign away your rights and responsibilities, and that should be it. But instead, the state will override those organizations, including private sperm donors. When a gay couple basically has this private sperm donor, there was a lesbian couple who had a child. The donor had signed away all rights and responsibilities, and then the lesbian couple basically they applied for health insurance, not health, sorry, they applied for welfare. Yeah. And the state was like, well, before we give you welfare, we're going to make sure that the father pays his due. And they're like, the father has nothing to do with this. And the state overrode their contract. And the state pursued the man beyond anything those women wanted.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to talk to the nature of law and economics here. What incentives do you think it creates if a man's not responsible for his actions? Let's say the state says, no, we're not going to force men to pay for the children that they may have. Do you think that might increase hazardous behavior insofar as, or sexual behavior, meaning that there might be more kids born out of wedlock that guys don't want to pay for? Now I don't have to pay for them, so I don't really care what I do. I may use less condoms. I may have more unprotected sex. If I don't have to pay for it, who will? Do you think the state will step in and then and therefore help the mother pay for the child? Do you think that will will grow the state or shrink the state? I mean, me personally thinks that creates the wrong incentive structure, meaning that men will act in a more nefarious manner. They'll have more unprotected sex. You'll see more kids born out of wedlock, and I think that just leads to poverty. But I mean, go ahead.
Regardless of incentives, I don't think we should ever make laws or enforce laws that are reducing people's liberty, regardless of what those consequences may be, as long as those consequences don't involve harming other people. And so I'm not.
Well, what about the child? If the child's not paid for, doesn't that harm the child? If the child's worse off because the state said we don't want them to pay, isn't somebody being harmed?
So my ideal situation is that a woman and a man went, and again, ideal situations versus what actually happens. But I think that this can lead to people being much more careful about birth control in the first place and about having abortions early if that's what happens. But I don't think that it benefits anyone to make people responsible for a child they did not want and that they did not agree to. I think that making people responsible for things that they opted out.
What happens? I mean, like when a man and a woman engage in sex, the outcome is primarily a baby. There's many ways to mitigate that. What responsibility do both people have to mitigate the occurrence of them having a child? Don't they have the responsibility, one, to take birth control, a male to use the condom?
Yeah, and
why reduce the incentives of them doing so?
Because it's not about because regardless, well, one, I will point out that men not being forced to be responsible for their for children they create will incentivize women to be much more. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Much more like, no, we're using birth control. God damn it. But I think that's the thing is that it's two individuals need to take responsibility for their birth control and for having those conversations at the point of pregnancy.
So you're saying that the woman will be more incentivized to take more birth control if she knows the state's not going to force her partner to or the father of her kid to pay for it, essentially.
Potentially. Again, I can't speak for the incentives of every woman in every situation, but I mean, frankly, I have never spent any time going, oh, like if I had a baby, like my guy would take care of it, because no, I am responsible for my birth control. And I'm responsible for my methods of preventing pregnancy. True. And it is better to make people basically tell people, hey, you need to be responsible as early as possible, because prevention is much better than having to deal with a situation after it's occurred.
Right. Then that's a good point on the female taking more responsibility for birth control.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I don't know. I mean, I have a problem with women trying to corner the abortion rights issue. I think it's a matter of life, not a matter of subjective to gender. But that's me. I don't, Corey, go ahead, Avens, answer that.
There is certainly a moral situation to be discussed in terms of a life versus a life in that scenario, and I think that the pro-choice dialogue unfortunately tends to ignore that and say, hey, there's no moral issue, just abort. And I tend to be of the kind of Walter Block evictionist perspective, which is like, I have the right to evict something from my body whenever I want to, but that doesn't give me the right to necessarily kill it. If it does, consequentially end in the death of a fetus, because 9 out of 10 abortions happen in the first 12 weeks, which will inevitably end up with a dead fetus. That's simply a factor of it, and so but I recognize that there are competing rights, and at the end of the day, like at no point does one individual get to enslave another, and so as a result, I see competing rights, I see a huge moral dilemma, and I also recognize that no person should ever be able to impose upon another person in that way.
Okay.
And so that makes me pro-choice.
Now, I'm going to move to Corey, who commands the ire of feminists all over the world. What was it, Corey? I can't remember what you wrote a piece on. It was something about clothing, or I don't know. You wrote something on stats. On, what was that piece you wrote that everybody got all pissed off? And the most pissed off feminist
sure.
I don't remember what the
Kevin.
piece was.
I pissed off everyone about everything. I think it was okay. We were talking about risk mitigation, and I was defending the people. I'm not saying that this is a good tactic to avoid rape, and obviously rape is a terrible thing. But people say, a young woman shouldn't dress a certain way or go out in the dark alley and during certain times because it's a possibility that they might get raped. And then some feminists, I'm not going to say all will, but some do say, oh, that's victim blaming or whatnot. And so in one post a while back, I was like, they're not really blaming the victim. They're really just saying that, this is reality. Like, there are rapists out there, and young women are prone to being raped.
They make the same argument when you say there's an individual right to own a weapon, like women should carry a gun. They make this.
I'm all about gun rights.
It would be like someone saying, like, don't tell me to lock my doors. Teach them not to steal. Like, it's
right.
Exactly what I was saying. So the point was, I was just defending people saying, these people, they might not be right to say that, a young woman shouldn't wear something to avoid mitigating rape because, that might not be an effective way to do it. But I'm just saying that their intentions are pure. They want, rape to decline. They're looking out for those women's best interests. I know it might not be good advice, but I don't think they're blaming the victim personally. I think it's more of a risk mitigation thing. Just like, for example, as Matt just said, we live in a world where robbery exists, and it's not like I'm going to go over to, it's not like if somebody tells me to lock my doors at night, I'm not going to be like, you're victim blaming. Like, it's not my responsibility to lock my doors. Like, I tell the thieves not to rob me.
Right. I'm going to move on to Kevin. I don't think that feminists hate Kevin as much as they hate you, but I know his wife hates him, so I'm going to count that as feminist ire. Specifically, does your wife hate you because you force her to give you hot meals on a nightly basis?
No. My wife hates me because literally today is my 20th anniversary and I'm doing this show.
You're the worst husband in the world. You are a misogynist. You know that's important to her.
Yeah.
You know it's a very important day for her, and you're here with an Emmy, and you're eating Ritz crackers. Look like a goddamn idiot.
How did you know they were Ritz, by the way? What are you, stalking?
I can smell them. I love Ritz crackers with a little bit of peanut butter.
All right, just shut. First of all, your hair is sticking up weird. Just comb that.
That's part of the style.
It's not a style.
It is a style.
Homeless? Is this a style?
You look like Alfalfa from the Little Rat.
Avens knows I'm homeless. Did you tell Avens I'm homeless?
No, you look like a fucking hipster, though.
Like a
hipster.
I look like a hipster.
Like a lumberjack hipster with that fucking thing going on.
That makes me feel better, Avens. Thank you.
All right, let me just. This is my precious time here, so I'm going to say two things. Number one, we have a sponsor tonight. My brother sent this to me. Peat Monster, okay? Ooh. This is a fantastic scotch, and he didn't want me to mention, but I'm going to mention his company is New England Arborists, okay? If you got wood, protect your wood. That's their motto. Anyway.
Wait, what are they protecting their wood from? Is it like what?
Viruses, stuff like that. Anyways, let me tell you, I actually consider myself a feminist, and I'm not even joking when I say that. I'm a guy, yes, but I've always been very, I've been one of the people who looks sort of at the feminists and says, I agree with a lot of what they say, except I think they're aiming in the wrong direction. In America specifically, I think people have really given too much time and effort towards fairly trivial issues. I think if the whole world had reached the point where the only feminist issue was, whether or not a Texas religious company is forced to pay for your birth control, if the whole world had reached that point, then yeah, we should be providing all of our attention to that. But I think if you look at the bigger issues around the world, and I think feminists in general don't, and again, I'm not anti-feminist, but what I'm saying is I think more attention should be paid to the fact that, number one, look at in Africa, where it's actually in a lot of places a crime to be raped. Not to rape, to be raped.
Mm-hmm.
If you're raped, they will stone you and kill you. Okay? Look at in China, where there's actually a genocide going on right now, where there's selective abortions going on to the point where male births outnumber female births by something like 1.4 to 1. I mean, there's an actual war against women going on around the world, and I think too many people in the Western world are completely ignoring it because they're caught up in the little things of their daily lives. No offense to American feminists. I'm just saying, I think if we really want to stand up and make a difference to women, you have to look internationally.
Okay, that's actually a really good point.
I agree with that.
I'm shocked that you made a cogent point. Mike, I know you want to get in here specifically on the feminist issue. I mean, do you feel like, gosh, a lot of issues are solely pertaining to women, or do you feel that the same things that offend women offend all people, all human beings? Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to maybe kind of address Avens' points, because I actually, first of all, I do agree with her. I think birth control should be over the counter. Corey and I have talked about that a couple times. I don't understand why it's not. So I totally agree on that. But I think a couple of the issues that she talked about, they're not really feminist issues. She talks about, over-the-counter medication. I don't know if that's a feminist issue. The man not having the rights to opt out of fatherhood, I don't know if that's a feminist issue. So I don't think that she's necessarily bringing up feminist points. But one thing I wanted to point out to her is when she says that, no government policy should ever trample liberty, and if a man doesn't want to be a father, then you're trampling on his liberty. And this is one thing that I've noticed with libertarians that libertarians actually annoy me on this one, is I don't think libertarians actually believe that externalities exist. If there's a negative incentive or externality created by any sort of liberty, then you have to consider that externality, and if this creates an incentive for more irresponsible behavior, then that's a negative externality that needs to be addressed, whether it's liberty or not. You can't make policy based on, well, I can opt out of anything because liberty, bro. It doesn't work that way.
Right. So you're saying that government has a responsibility to mitigate externalities insofar as controlling incentives and constraints of law. And I think Richard Posner would agree with you on that. And making law more efficient, so that you have a far more efficient marketplace, and you cut the costs of externalities on society. I think that's more of a Posner point.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And it's not only that, it's I mean, when you talk about rights, libertarians talk about personal responsibility a lot. And I agree with what you said. You have to be responsible for your own behavior, whether there's negative externalities involved or not. If you father a child, we always talk about as libertarians personal responsibility. I don't know how you could argue at that point that you can just opt out of being a father. I don't think that's a right at that point. You have to be responsible for your own behavior.
Right. Now let me get Maddie. I'll go to you in a minute. I'm going to let Avens respond to Mike. Go ahead, Avens.
So I actually, with the way that I write my articles is often addressing those particular issues in a feminist perspective. And so one of the things that feminists talk about a lot is gender roles and gender expectations, and the idea that males and females are the assumption that they're different in terms of, let's say, protection versus nurture versus whatever. And so I actually talk about, when I talked about, for example, the nobody should be forced to be a parent situation, I talk about the idea that, like, once upon a time, the assumption was that, like, men have orgasms and women have babies, and now it's like that women choose whether or not to have babies and men sign checks, and that's a problem because it's an assumption that men have to be providers, and I actually don't like that presumption that men should be providers. Now, I absolutely see that some people make these arrangements, and sometimes women are the nurturers and men are the providers. But again, as a feminist, I tend to avoid presuming that these dynamics are going to exist, that people are inevitably going to be these two roles, and thus I can't say that we can like force men to be providers when as women, as feminists, we say, oh, but I don't want to be the nurturer. If I'm not going to be forced to be the nurturer, I can't force men to be providers.
Okay.
So that's generally how I look at a lot of these issues. And I mean, granted, feminism is a large thing. It's not a monolith, and also it's a huge dominant paradigm in our society now. There's a lot of things that are phrased in a feminist perspective, and I would love to address liberty issues in general, male issues, female issues, whatever, and talk about how feminism, if applied consistently, will matter to these issues. And so I actually did an article on false rape accusations yesterday, and so
yeah, I saw that.
Like I'm constantly I'm all about talking about these things so that feminists look at them, so that feminists, especially statist feminists, look at them and they go, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm like, here, we're applying feminist values, right? That women are individuals and that they're going to be however they're going to be. And I take those values and I say, now apply them in this way and recognize that it's not just limited to these social justice feminist issues that everyone's getting microaggressions and everyone's getting riled up about. Like there are other things we can talk about.
It seems you're applying more logic to it than the social justice warrior feminist.
Yes, but I can also present it in an emotional way. And so again, it's all about like finding your audience and finding how to communicate to them the issues that matter. Good
point. Now I want to get to Matt.
Yes.
Matt, you're a woman in today's world. What do you find most difficult? Is it the way your boyfriend treats you?
The fact that his balls haven't dropped?
Yeah.
There are no balls.
Sorry, I had to say something funny. You
there
guys
you go, mate. Even Avens is getting some shots in at you, Matt. But you wanted to hop in on this. Go ahead.
I was going to hop off of Kevin's point, who's listing modern feminist issues. He forgot Barbie's body proportions, which is a big one for me.
Oh, that bothers you. Have you been trying to look like a Barbie, Matt?
Yes. Yeah, they're so unrealistic. I can't match it.
I think if you were a life-size Barbie, your legs would be about 77 feet long.
Yes.
And your arms would hang down to about your knees. I think that's the proportions that they came up with. You know?
I don't know. I kind of want to play off what Kevin said. I mean, I think I largely agree with him. And I mean, I was even reading some of Avens stuff before the show, and I mean, it's more the kind of feminism I think most people would agree with, even if they don't consider themselves feminists. I don't know. I think feminism, as you said, in our country is really just like, should a Christian company have to provide people with birth control? I mean, it's such minor issues compared to where we've come. So.
Okay. So I'm going to get to Vince here. Due to the high volume of feminists in Columbus, Ohio, do you have a lot of feminists calling into your show with their misandrist rhetoric, their man-hating rhetoric? And if so, how do you respond? I mean, what do you ask? Do you ask them out on a date? Do you ask for their number? What do you do?
A combination of those things usually. When I think of feminism and when I talk to people like that, I think feminism at its core almost strikes me as originating as a liberal thought, because liberalism oftentimes will want to blame something else for their situation. And I think in today's age, I think a lot of women can go out and do what men do, and they don't have the restrictions like, fighting for women's suffrage and stuff like that. So I think feminism almost reminds me a little bit of unions, where unions used to have a bit of a function, and now it may not. Like feminism may not have as big of a function as it did back in the day for women. And one of the things I was thinking about too with the opting out for parenthood, I think that if you're truly a feminist, wouldn't you want a man to have responsibility for his actions? Because if you allow a man to opt out of parenthood, isn't that giving him more power?
Right.
So if you want to get more power, want women to get more power, wouldn't you want to go and have the man be responsible for his actions? Because him opting out is him getting more power.
To your union point, I think Avens makes a good point insofar as there's these social justice warrior feminists where she's coming at them and dousing them with a little bit of logic, coming at them from the point of emotion. So she's more so changing minds of an already existing culture that perhaps needs a little bit of pragmatism and a little bit of reason injected into some of their arguments, and maybe she can sway somebody's mind to not being such a radical, man-hating feminist.
And
I'm not saying that they exist.
I think one thing Well, I think one thing that's important too is you got to look at where something takes you 5, 10 years down the road. Like there may be some benefits now if a guy could perhaps opt out, or if people don't take personal responsibility today, where's that going to lead culture 5, 10, 20 years down the road? So that's why I think from kind of an emotional aspect too, you got to look at things like that as well.
Right. Now, Avens, you do have a column of your own though, where people can ask you questions and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Will.
I mean, I'm going to ask like a lot of questions, like what are you doing later? I mean, where do you live? Like,
Los Angeles.
We live in the same place.
Really?
We
I live
need
in Long
feminism because of
No
Will.
shit. No shit.
Yes.
I live in Belmont Shore, so I'm down here, and it's no big deal. It's 2nd Street in Glendora.
We should hang out sometime.
Yeah, oh for sure. 2nd in Glendora, no big deal. Long Beach, Belmont Shore.
Santa Monica.
Yeah. Oh, I know Santa Monica well.
Yeah.
Well, aren't you busy working out all day tomorrow, though?
Yeah, I'm pretty much working out, aka stats, all day.
Well, don't you have to get your STD treatments tomorrow?
Actually, I'm going to the clinic to pick up my free, empowering antibiotics.
There you go.
They are now free, removing all incentives for me, engaging in non...
Wouldn't Ian's idea, though, that you should be able to opt out of parenthood have saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars?
I mean, jeez. I wouldn't be homeless right now, Avens, and my hair would look a lot better.
That's good.
Shut up, Kevin. It's not that funny. All right. I don't necessarily... I wanted to do some stuff on Amtrak and the train.
I haven't really been following that story at all. I heard people died.
It's pretty good. It's bad. I want to get the response, the political response. This pissed me off today to a degree. It was really bad. It almost pissed me off more than Kevin's face.
You live in Long Beach. Where are you originally from, though, given your accent?
New York.
I'm from Boston, so okay.
So we're East Coasters on the West Coast.
That's right.
So many things in common.
If we were on the East Coast, we'd be fighting, but we're on the West Coast, so we have to stick together.
We're besties here. We need to stick together.
Go on.
But the Amtrak thing was, there was a train that crashed in Philly, and I was going 100. Mike, you've heard of this probably, right?
Yeah, I know about it.
It was going 106 miles an hour around a turn where it was supposed to go 50. And
107, I think, but whatever,
Right. Oh yeah, stats, Mr. Statistician over here. But anyway, it crashes, and what do the Democrats do? I think it was a coincidence that there was an Amtrak bill in the House and the Senate. And an Amtrak bill to increase funding, and the Republicans didn't want to increase any funding, which is entirely logical because it's a money-losing enterprise, and Amtrak is god-awful. But anyway, the Democrats used it to demagogue, which they love to do. And they're saying, oh, this train crashed because there's not enough funding, as if the bill that they just shot down had something to do with the train crashing. As people are stumbling out of the debris, hanging on to their lives, the Democrats use this, they try to make it like a wedge issue.
Emotion.
Exactly. And then this is what gets to me. You should be ridiculed, excoriated. You should be called names for doing this. Somebody should get up there and make them feel like the children that they are. You shouldn't go, oh, I know that you... How could you say that, using this issue to fund Amtrak has anything to do with emotions? Like, it's just more government. It's like, tell me how Amtrak helps somebody. This is what I mean, to my point, I think that they should be nailed for this. And the media won't do it. I know how I'm going to do it. What do you think, Corey? Do you think I'm right here? Be on my side for once.
Amtrak sucks. I can guarantee that. It's expensive as hell. It's not good.
Is it because it's underfunded? Is it because it's under? Should they get more when they make a mistake?
Definitely not. Screw that.
Right.
I went up to New York.
We're back to incentives, right? Go ahead, Corey. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I went up to New York like almost a year ago. And it was like $300 for like just to get from Rhode Island to New York via the Amtrak, and it's very, very close. And it was just so expensive. I don't even know why I did it. To drive there would have been much cheaper, but I'm an idiot.
So yeah, again we go to incentives. I like how the government's incentives are always backwards. There's a massive train crash, obviously negligence or something went wrong, so let's throw money at them. You know what I mean? This is going to make Amtrak, open their eyes and be like, man, we have to change things because, geez, we just got more money for doing something completely incorrect.
Incentives.
Incentives, right? I know that Kevin has something to say on this issue. This is to my point again. the left gets away with so much because we approach it as they're coming, their intentions are always so pure, and we let them get away with this Amtrak crap. This is your doing, Kevin. You did this. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to reinforce the fact that I'm an Emmy-possessing commentator. And second of all, number one, this is what happens. Think about this. The Veterans Administration, veterans die, so what do? Give the VA more money.
Right. What is that?
Amtrak, trains crash. What do? Give them more money. And seriously, is that how it works in the private sector? Is that how it works anywhere else in real life? Failure happens, you're rewarded with more money. You said it all. I actually agree with you, Will, and I'm probably going to kill myself tonight because of that.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm going to agree with you on purpose just to see how long you make it. Even if I disagree completely, I'm going to say I agree and hope for the best.
Thanks.
Kevin. Kevin, not Kevin. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't know why my screen says Kevin. I want to talk to Michael because he's been bringing up some valid points here. Michael, this is common with the government to create inverse incentives and to demagogue issues. Again, emotion. Oh, this happened. People died. It's obviously an emotional issue, and they're going to use it to get more Amtrak funding. I mean, this is what they do. They do not care. I'm telling you, they don't care about they don't care about the minority community, any community, the unskilled workers. They do not care about immigrants fleeing to this country. They care about their power. They care about growing government. This is my point. Do you agree with me yet?
I mean, obviously, Will, I agree with you that, I mean, I've talked about Amtrak and high-speed rail. A lot of people love high-speed rail for some asinine reason that I don't understand. It wouldn't work in the United States, and Amtrak is just proof of that, really. I mean, a company that's subsidized by the government, something like $2-3 billion a year, and they still can't make a profit. So why would high-speed rail work? And that is a typical Democrat solution to every problem. Well, if it doesn't work, let's just throw more money at the problem, and they don't get the underlying problem. Maybe there's an issue structurally with an organization or anything that money's just not. You throw money at them, they're just going to waste it. I will say to Kevin's point, though, the VA is completely underfunded. They're not run well, and throwing more money at them won't help solve the problem. But they don't have enough funds. VA hospitals are some of the crappiest hospitals in the entire country. You would think that if we can. And I agree that we need to spend money on defense, and I agree that we need to have a role in the world. But if we do that, we do need to fund these VA hospitals. The first thing they should look at is changing the structure of the VA. I completely agree with that. But the hospitals are underfunded. That is an actual issue where there isn't enough funding.
Right.
Don't you think the first thing they should look at is competition?
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, they should definitely look at competition. They should privatize some areas of the veterans' healthcare system. There's no doubt about that. And if they did that, then they could look at that point and look at the funds. But if they're going to, I'm just looking at this from a pragmatic approach. I don't think they're going to privatize the Veterans Administration. I don't think they're going to privatize the health system. So if they're not going to do that, yes, they need to look at the underlying issues that cause the problems. But they are underfunded. The hospitals are terrible. The doctors are terrible. So, yeah, the VA does have a lack of funds. Would more funds fix the underlying problems right now? No, of course not. You can't just throw money at a problem and expect to get it fixed. But the VA is the one area where they could use some more money.
That's a good point. I mean, if the government's going to run it and perhaps it needs more funding, I think a change in leadership would help. I think
that would definitely help.
I think a part of the problem is the administration. We have how many more minutes there, Mike? 6?
Yeah.
6.
I don't have many viewer questions. I would like to get to any topic at this point that it doesn't involve Kevin Ryan.
I wanted to add one thing about Amtrak.
Go ahead, Matt.
Just looking up the exact set. It's so to get a burger and a beer on Amtrak is $20, and they lose approximately $83.4 million a year selling food and bricks. So that's a pretty next level incompetence. So,
I mean, yeah. What's their incentive to turn a profit? If you do poorly, they just get more money anyway.
I remember, actually this kind of ties into what Kevin was saying about a role for competition, but I remember us watching Stossel once, and he was interviewing Al Sharpton, and he said to Sharpton, regarding New York's subway system, if the government didn't build this all, would it ever have arisen? And Sharpton, of course, says, no, it never would have. And then Stossel reveals, well, it was originally private before the government took it over. So you absolutely can have a government, or you can have a private industry run these things.
Okay, I have another question for Avens. It's a very interesting one. If
Okay.
you had to punch 2 people on the panel and kill one, who would it be and why?
Kill me.
And you can pick me.
I don't believe in aggression.
Okay, so let's say you had to.
Question violates the NAP.
Avens, punch me. Punch me.
Okay, let me rephrase. How do I do this without aggression?
That's the thing is,
What about hypothetical aggression? Let's just say that, I mean, it's like playing a video game, okay? If you're not really aggressing anybody, you're just playing a video game.
People are just way too fond of violence.
Okay, let's say it's a video game, and you're going to kick someone in the shin. All right? 2 people you had to kick in the shin, and 1 person you had to smack the back of their hand.
We like violence. We like violence. We're men.
Right. You're violent by nature.
See, but we could address this as like kinky violence. Like if it was like
Whoa.
if it was violence in the
I wasn't gonna say it.
Did you see? So on Facebook before this, somebody had like posted what was it? Somebody said ask her questions about sex to see if she'd open up, and I'm like, you haven't seen an interview with me before because I'm perfectly open from the get-go. But it was funny because I was thinking of like what kind of sexual questions could someone ask. But here we go. We'll just make it kinky and then it's okay because it's consent, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm the worst at sex questions though. See, the best person at sex questions would be Kevin Ryan because he's married and he fantasizes a lot because he never has sex.
The best person at sex questions would be me.
Oh, really? Well, no, to ask you, not for me to ask him.
Fair
for him
enough.
To ask you because he's got this perverted married mind that never gets, you know.
Who wants to get kicked in the shins as part of their
Yeah,
sexual...
you see what I mean?
See, I'm all about consent. So find a consensual way to do this, and I'm down. I will commit some violence.
They have to. Of course, they're going to consent.
Kill Will.
I generally enjoy slapping men in the face, but that's another thing.
Oh wow! Whoa! Whoa!
Hey.
I mean, that is the most misandrous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Is that if they don't provide well enough for you?
No, it has not. It's not related to punishment. It's not related to punishment at all. It's simply
I
just
see.
sexual interest.
I got you. I thought it was if they didn't open up your car door, you gave them a good smack.
Oh no! See, you know what's funny is funny story is so I have 2 older brothers. My brother had taught me when it's like the 90s, whatever. When my brother started driving, he taught me that as a girl, the guy would open the door for me, right? Unlock the door and open it for me, and then when I got in the car, I was supposed to unlock the driver's side because there was no like electronic locks at the time. And then by the time I came of age and went on dates, there was electronic locks, so that went out the window. And it really sucks because that was a nice little complimentary. You open the door and then like unlock the door for fucking yeah.
How do we know?
Technology is fucked with our nice system of.
How do we know the door holding wasn't part of the patriarchy though? That's my question.
See. Fucking people need to just be polite and nice to each other, and I don't care if it's male or female or whatever. That's the thing that drives me nuts is when other feminists and again this is just like stereotyping, but a lot of mainstream feminists will like get upset about various actions, like, oh, this man held the door open for me, and so I'm like what the fuck? People should be polite to each other. People should be respectful to each other, and it shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not they have a vagina, a penis, or something in between. I don't care. Like, people like to be. I hold the door open for people when I get to it first.
I just want to say before we get
the intent's the issue. That's the issue.
I forgot to tell everybody that on 10 p.m. right after the show, Jeffrey Tucker's on with Corey Welder.
Ooh.
It's a live show right after this, right after we cut off at 7, which is a hard cutoff. I want to say thank you to Avens for coming on. You've been great, very insightful. You're very pretty.
Oh, thank you.
Matt Palumbo used to be the prettiest in the panel until you showed up.
So I get to plug my various writings.
Go for it.
Is that like
plug
a thing?
Go.
So I have a YouTube channel that I just started called For the Love of Liberty, where I talk about various. I talk to libertarians about how to talk about liberty to other people and talk about various libertarian issues. I have addressed Do Black Lives Matter, which is actually an interesting video you should check out. As well as how to bring libertarian issues, bring libertarian ideas effectively to other people. I also have on AvensO'Brien.com. That's AVENS O'Brien.com. You can find everything that I've done, any stuff that I've publicly published. So my thoughts on liberty stuff, my Libertarian Republic stuff, my YouTube channel, and any of my personal blogging. So that is where to find me. So there we go. I've done my
Thanks
plug.
again,
Avens.
Avens. Go ahead, Maddie. One last thing.
You said you have a video called "Do Black Lives Matter?" What was the conclusion of that video?
So basically, I talked about the Black Lives Matter versus the All Lives Matter concept.
Okay, I actually haven't seen the video, so I was only kidding. But
You've watched the video?
I have not seen. No, I was kidding. But
You should check it out. It's about the concept that, like, if all lives matter, then of course Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And so how to discuss that without being an asshole? So, like, during the riots in Baltimore, when people are holding signs that say Black Lives Matter, it's like, how do you just, like people who go up and, like, no, all lives matter. It's like, no, everyone's life matters. So, like, have an inclusive conversation. And so I talk about inclusive conversations all the time.
All right, we got a hard stop here. We're up against it. Again, I want to say thank you, Avens. Corey, I'm so happy that you exist. You've got to come on again. Kevin, Michael Lee, you're a great man. Kevin, no one cares about you. That's all right. Maddie, you're a great man. I'm glad you started working out. Vince, we'll have to have you on again when we can talk more.
Thank you. Thanks,
You're
guys.
very good. You're a good-looking man. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maddie or Mike, you can cut it. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Avens, thank you. Bye.